you so much, Nana and Reverend Kalis, for your wonderful words. And thank you, Chen, for having the piano tuned and working tirelessly to make this concert possible. And thank you all for coming today. I'm going to start with a rather unusual sonata by Beethoven. If your phones are not off, okay. This is an unusual sonata because it's only in 2 short movements, and it's rather inward looking. And this is not completely characteristic of most of Beethoven's music. And this piece sits between 2 artistic periods, the middle period and the late period. And the middle period is where most of Beethoven's famous works come from, the Appassionata, Sonata, the Eroica Symphony. And it's called heroic because this was a time when he was struggling to assert himself over his illness, over his terrible deafness. And the late period has some more esoteric pieces, and the concern is more on otherworldly things. It's almost a more religious state of mind in his later music. And this piece sits on the precipice between these 2 periods. And I'm going to demonstrate what I feel are some of the evocations and imagery that comes to mind in this sonata. If you look on the back of your programs I wrote, put a synopsis of my thoughts on these pieces. So, in the first movement, first movement starts out with a kind of motif that's very typical of Beethoven. It's not really a melody, it's just kind of a fragment, and it's very assertive in its character. It reminds me of music, which you all know. It's just a little cell, a little piece of musical material. But what's unusual about this piece is that he constantly slips off into this dream or this reverie, battle between, or a dialogue between these 2 states of mind, or states of the soul. And what's the real miracle that happens at the end is that little motif, it comes back, but it sounds very distant, like choirs far away. And the second movement is also very special. It has no struggle whatsoever. It's just an infinitely cycling Schubertian song. It repeats over and over again. It's almost never ending. And the thing that comes to mind for me is the fates of ancient Greek mythology who would spin the threads of every individual's life. And it goes like this. Say a few more things about Beethoven and his personality, and I think that this sonata, moreover, is when Beethoven is starting to think about death, and he's getting older, and he's thinking about the world beyond this one. And the sonata, I think it's a lot about letting go, even of his own struggle with his deafness, with his hardships in his life. And another thing that's really striking about Beethoven is that I feel that his music has a kind of a moral purpose to it, even an egalitarian purpose. The words in the 9th Symphony are, "All men will be as brothers." And I have a wonderful professor at the Manhattan School of Music, a vocal coach, and he had some pictures over his piano in his teaching studio. And one was of Tolstoy, and one was of Beethoven. And he said that these were his favorite artists in all of history, in the West at least. And he said the reason that he chooses those as the pinnacle of art for him is because not only are their works beautiful intrinsically, but they have this, they examine some of the deepest questions of life. And I also want to read you a quote from one of my favorite composers, Claude Debussy. And Debussy was not a man who would give much praise, and he actually said of Beethoven, he said Beethoven's music sounds to him like nails and falling on a metal ground or something like that. He had some negative things to say about Beethoven, but here's what he says about the Ninth Symphony, which comes from this late period. Debussy says, quote, "Beethoven suffered with all his heart. He ardently desired humanity to find communion in him, and from that desire was born his cry to the humblest and the poorest of his brothers, uttered by the thousand voices of his genius." Here's the piece.